Welcome to another episode of The Heart of the Matter. Today we're talking about brain training and learning cognitive skills. And with me, our guest is Mr. Ben Arikpo. He has a story to tell, and nobody better to tell the story than himself. Mr. Arikpo, you're welcome to The Heart of the Matter.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here.
Brain training.
Yeah.
What brought you into brain training? Tell us about it.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting story, and again, as I always say, I always start by saying, when God wants to do something, He brings you into a circumstance that enables you to find a solution that is in line with His purpose for your life. When I was growing up, I got married, and after years, I got children. God blessed me with 3 children. The first 2 were very bright and smart and intelligent, and they did well in school. In fact, to the point where my first son always won prizes in school, and his colleagues would call him normal thing. So it was a normal thing for him to win prizes. My second child, a daughter, was also very bright and is winning prizes. Then comes a third one. At age 4, I realized that he started struggling. He was reversing his letters. When he wants to write 6, he will write 9. He wants to write 9, he will write 6. When he wants to write 7, he will write it the other way around. He will write to write D, he will write B. He will write to write B, he will write D. So he was reversing his letters. And we thought, oh, he will outgrow it. Even in his speech, he was also struggling with his speech. He will call things, he will see a trailer and will say a trigger. And we thought it was child's talk. But then that continued, and my wife was worried, but I kept saying, oh, don't worry, he would outgrow it. But by age 8, I had then the opportunity of having to work with him to prepare him for his termly exam. And I was shocked. To my disappointment, he was unable to read at that point. I realized that suddenly I had an 8-year-old in my hand who was unable to read, and I was devastated. I was devastated. So from that disappointment and devastation, I started to look for a solution within Nigeria for him. I went from place to place looking for where I could get help for him on his condition. It was in that process they told me, oh, he was dyslexic. But I couldn't get a situation, I couldn't get a program that could address his issues.
Okay, so what is dyslexia?
Dyslexia is a learning disability that makes people, and when I say people, I use that consciously, both adults and children, unable to read. But dyslexia as a condition does not come alone. Sometimes it comes with dysgraphia, which is an inability also to write. So they come like a twin challenge, a twin problem of inability to read and inability to write. So at age 8, he had both conditions.
Is dyslexia a medical condition? Is it a condition that can be treated with drugs or something like that?
Yes, it is a medical condition. It's a medical condition, but from my point of view as a brain trainer, that the drugs cannot help. Because drugs do not help to regenerate the brain. The condition is, if at all is diagnosed, what you need to do is to find a brain training program, because basically what the person needs at that point is to begin to do exercises for the brain. Brain training is nothing other than brain exercises, so to speak. It's actually having regular exercises for your brain to enable the brain neurons and the connectors to rewire and to reconnect.
Okay, now just back to dyslexia, because I know a lot of our viewers may have children that are dyslexic.
Yeah.
It's a medical condition. Yeah. Is it a sickness or disease?
It is a challenge. Okay. It's a disability. It's a learning disability.
Now, back to your son.
Yeah.
At 4, the signs were there.
Yes.
But it wasn't detected. At 8, you knew that we have a problem here.
Yes.
And so you took steps to get detection. What would you advise parents to do in order to detect the fact that there is a problem and find out what the problem is?
I think there are 2 simple things to tell to parents. One is, if I wasn't working with my child to help him with that particular revision, I would not have found out.
Okay.
So get involved with your child's education. We have delegated our children's education to the weakest people in the chain. Now, house helps, who perhaps don't have the same level of education as you do, are allowed to do homework with your children. And of course, most of the time they fail it. So get involved with the child's education so that you will know exactly, you begin to see those symptoms and signs, because you will see them. You see when a child reverses the figures. You see when a child is unable to read. You notice it when the child is consistently failing. And then you will say something is wrong and begin to look for a solution. So early detection is important. But you can only do that when you are working with a child. If you don't work with the child, if you're hands off from the child and say, okay, I've paid the lesson teacher will do it, the school will do it, you will never get to know. By the time you know, it's too late. We're beginning to have in the centers now younger adults, 16, 17, 18 year olds, whom they are bringing, who have gone through those early stages and then are having the situation now. Parents suddenly realize, oh, this child can't move anywhere. He can't go to anything. He can't do anything because he's talk.
I want to add this because in an African setting, what can happen is when a child mirrors a letter, because the child is dyslexic, the parents beat the child.
Exactly.
What would you say to parents who...
That was my first reaction as well. Initially, when my child comes back with a poor result, the first thing is to smack him. I mean, why should he not come back with a good result? His brother has been flying, his sister has been flying. What's wrong with him? He's lazy. And of course, I've had people come in and say, don't worry, I know this girl is just really lazy, this boy is lazy. It's not about being lazy. It's about their cognitive skills. Please try to find out what their cognitive profile is. Knowing the cognitive profile of your child is like having a medical certificate that says you are in a good state of health. Once the cognitive profile is there, it will tell you the strengths and weaknesses of the 7 cognitive skills in your child or in yourself. Because again, like I say all the time to adults, even adults require to do a cognitive assessment, because that would also help you to know what you should be doing as you grow older.
I want us to come back and talk about cognitive skills, but let's go back to your son and the detection. What was it that was done that they said your son is dyslexic?
Okay. As I mentioned before, first finding out that he wasn't able to read even the notes he brought from school. When I said, read this so that I then help him to get the answer, he's unable to read it. So I said, okay, spell something. And he's unable to spell. Now, to give you a typical example, when I say spell house, and he goes K, and I say, no, I mean house, house. He says K, M, and I'm so, no, you can't say that. So dyslexic people have difficulty even recognizing alphabets and putting them together and being able to make sounds out of that. Now, so that's part of it. So when we identify that problem, and of course, you know, schools, especially, I'm sorry, but sometimes with private school education, people in private schools, because of the pressure to get the child to the next class, if it by parents themselves or by the school system itself, they keep promoting children until they get to a point where they really can't then read. I was talking with a 32-year-old man yesterday who came in. He's a graduate of chemistry. He's gone to the UK to do a master's in some fancy thing, but inside he knows that he has cheated along to be where he is now. He is struggling now at his job because he realizes that he still has a problem with his memory or even with reading and writing. He can't write a proper brief for his boss, and he's supposed to be his boss's next right-hand man. So that challenge is making him afraid that he's going to lose his job. So he comes around and wants help. So again, it's not just for children. That detection comes from the point of view of what the child is unable to do. And so when you get to that point where you recognize that your child or the person is unable to do certain things, then you could begin to seek help. And early detection, I keep saying, is very key to early solution for this problem.
Now let's talk about these cognitive skills. You say there are 7.
Yes.
What are these 7 cognitive skills?
All right. The 7 cognitive skills that everybody is born with. Adults, I mean, when we're born with 7 of them. The first is attention. The second is processing speed. Attention is about remaining on task, focusing and remaining on task within a time frame. Processing is how fast you can process information. For instance, what's your name? If you ask people who are dyslexic or children who are autistic, what's your name? It takes them like sometimes 5 minutes to process that information and to come up with the answer. It's not they don't know their names. But then sometimes you see when they are with their parents or their guardians, they jump in and say the names for them. But they are still processing. So processing speed is also affected when people have low cognitive skills. At the same time, there's also working memory. Which is sometimes called short-term memory. That ability to hold memory in short span of time. For instance, if you tell a child 2 times 15, well, the simple thing is, 2 times 5 is 10, and then you write 0 and take 2, carry 2, as we say in primary school. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 that you've carried. People who have poor working memory will not remember that they've carried 2. So they will simply write 20 instead of remembering that they had 1 already to add to that 2 to make it 30. So that's when you begin to see those kind of issues showing up in those things. So those 3 are the fundamental cognitive skills: attention, processing speed, and working memory.
Okay, now
they
we're
are
just
the
going
base.
to hold that at the moment,
Right.
because we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back to the cognitive skills. Viewers, stay tuned to the Heart of the Matter. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking with Mr. Ben Arikpo about brain training. And just before the break, we started to talk about cognitive skills. You had talked about the first one being attention.
Yes.
And then you talked about memory,
Yeah,
short-term memory. I think the third one,
Processing speed.
processing speed. Can you just summarize them for those viewers that have just tuned in,
Right.
and then let's go on.
Yeah, the attention skill is the ability to stay on task and focus. You've got a lot of children and even adults, and in offices you see them, people who never sit in one
They
place.
say ADD, attention
Exactly,
deficit.
attention deficiency disorders and all of that. They move around from place to place. Even children in class, they never focus because they have these conditions and these issues. And my son had that condition as well. So in his own case, when he's in class and the teacher is teaching, he sits in the front and he gets bored with what the teacher is saying. He sneaks out. And the teacher would not notice. He just sneaks out to the orchestra room to play his drums. He's happy to play drums. So he had that condition as well. And then the processing speed is the speed at which they finish. So he's always the last to finish, gets 15 minutes extra time in every examination he writes because he's slow to process. They give him that extra time and they write on his sheet, given 15 minutes or 20 minutes as the case may be. And then working memory, short-term memory is about remembering the things, holding some things in immediate memory and being able to apply them.
A bit like RAM in a computer.
More or less, yes. Those 3 are very fundamental. In fact, they are called the fundamental basic skills that everybody needs. As they're growing up, those are the 3 they require. And then when people grow older, they require logic and reasoning. When you get into managerial positions, that's when you need that. And those ones are, the next 4 are called executive function skills. They are logic and reasoning, auditory processing. Logic and reasoning is, of course, making sense of a logical sequence of things. Auditory processing is whether your brain is actually listening and hearing the right sounds and the right connections. Visual processing, how your brain is able to remember patterns. And that's why we had a lady who brought her driver to the place, that each time she asks the driver to go to a place they've been before, he gets lost. That's because his visual processing skills are very poor. So he can't remember where he's been to. He can't remember. He has a brain problem. He's got a short-term memory, and he's got also a visual processing issue. And of course, the final one is long-term memory. After we have processed after those 7 skills have processed the knowledge, they transfer them to a knowledge bank. Okay. Every individual has a knowledge bank. And that's where the knowledge bank comes. The knowledge bank is like the bank or the brain bank, the central process, everything processed is stored so that it can be used. Yes, the hard drive. Yeah, you can now use it and draw from it. So the size of that brain bank, the knowledge bank, the size of the knowledge bank determines how smart a person is. So that when you ask a question, when so many things have been banked now, it's possible for the child or the person to remember because they've all processed and gone into the brain, the knowledge bank. The challenge we have with parents, or the difficulty with parents, is that we try to get lesson teachers to teach our children content. In other words, try to force information into the knowledge bank. And that cannot happen because it's got to go through the processing skills. For every knowledge to get into the knowledge bank, it must be processed. It must go through the cognitive skills. And if it doesn't go through, then it doesn't go into the knowledge bank. And so getting lesson teachers to just teach content and repeatedly teach content to children, and of course, I've been there too, so I know. You get disappointed with one lesson teacher, you fire that one and say he's not doing well. And you hire the next one who charges you higher. And so he tries again after 1 term or 2 terms, it doesn't do anything, and then you fire. That's not the solution. The solution is in finding out the strengths and the weaknesses of the cognitive skills and then being able to identify which ones are strong, which ones are weak, and then build up on the strong ones and work on the weak ones. Today, as we speak, only after 9 months of training these 2 children, my son has overcome his learning challenge. He's now reading and writing. He's writing stories. His grades moved from F and D to A's and B's in his school. It is an amazing story that is difficult to believe, but I mean, I have seen it work, and that's why, because of the conviction I have, Now we have decided to set up more centers in Calabar, in Lekki, and in Ikeja, because then we want to open up this thing and help as many people as are willing to be helped in this condition.
Can you put your hand on your heart and say that without brain training, not necessarily from you,
Yeah.
a dyslexic child would hardly be able to overcome dyslexia?
Yes, I can do that, because I've seen it practically speaking. I've tried everything before now, and I've not found any solution to it. Without brain training, my son would still have been struggling. I probably would have given up like most parents would do, because there was no solution at the point. But with brain training, I saw that he changed in 9 months.
Right in front of
Right in front of me. And of course, I was quite impatient too. At 3 months when I didn't see any results, I called the US and said, look, I'm not seeing any results in this child. They said, hey, calm down, be patient. This thing has been on for how many years now? I said 9 years. I said, okay, good. Just be patient. Just give him some time. And I like this example because I always like to say, when we were driving to ShopRite, he was at the back of the car and he starts screaming and laughing. And I said, what's the problem? He says, look at that man wearing a funny t-shirt. What is on the shirt? No love in the city. Oh, that was his first sentence with comprehension. First sentence with comprehension. Of course, he didn't know what he was doing. And then I approached the traffic light and he said, why are you standing there? I said, because there's a red light. I said, but it says turn right on red. He's beginning to comprehend. He's reading and comprehending. And then the third time is I met him watching a Yoruba movie. He doesn't speak Yoruba. What was he doing? He was reading the subtitles. And I stopped the movie and said, tell me the story. And I was surprised. He got the story. So he began to read with comprehension. So people should understand, it wasn't as if he couldn't read, but he wasn't reading with comprehension. At that time, he could meet a word like many in the first sentence. And in the next sentence, he would see the word many. He would still struggle with it. What's this word? He has just finished seeing it. So if you take his working memory together with his inability to read at the time, together, you could see that there will be struggle all around. But now, once he reads a word, especially with phonemic awareness, in the program we train children to sound out their words. So when it meets a new word and he's struggling with it, he says sound it. He just goes and sounds it and he gets the spelling right, or the pronunciation right. So it's giving him the skill and the tools with which he can do his own reading and get on with his work.
With the limited time that we have, before we came on air, you talked about adults also.
Yes.
Needing. Can you just tell us something about that quickly?
Yeah. There are 3 ways in which adults need it, and I'll be very quite familiar. The first one is that at the age of 40, especially if adults who have had difficult challenges, I mean, people who know that they struggle through school could also need it at the moment. But let's start with people who are 40. Neuroscience says that after 40 years, your brain condition starts going down. You start losing your memory. Your processing speed is slower. So you're not as fast as you would do before. So that's when you need the training to be able to boost your brain for the rest of your life. Brain training is for anyone 6 years and above. 6 years and above. So 120, 150, as the case may be. Second group of adults who need this training are those who have had traumatic brain injuries. The third ones, which we have seen dramatic results, are also people who've had strokes. When you had a stroke is a brain attack. It's a simple definition of stroke is a brain attack. When your brain has been attacked, it attacks the memory, it attacks the neurons, it attacks the connections. So when you have got a stroke, that's why you find that stroke patients hardly use all their limbs, sometimes the right or the left or whatever. Yeah. But when they get into brain training consistently over time, those neurons get rewired. Those brain parts that have been attacked get rewired. And over time, we've seen recoveries from traumatic brain injury and stroke patients as well.
Mr. Arikpo, it's been wonderful having you on the Heart of the Matter. We're really grateful you've been able to come. We wish you all the very best with the Brain Training and Development Center. And we're sure that you're going to save a lot of lives. Viewers, it's been great having you with us on this episode. We look forward to seeing you again for our next episode, same time next week. Until then, stay blessed.